Welcome back to the Procurement Federal Acquisition Supplement and Defence Federal Acquisition Supplements Clauses podcast. I'm Eric Marquette, and as always, I'm joined by Ruby Sturt and Paul Natopsky. Today, we're diving into the big changes coming to defence acquisition. Think speed, innovation, and a whole new approach to the workforce. But before we get into the future, let's set the stage with where we are now. Paul, you want to kick us off with a quick overview of the Adaptive Acquisition Framework?
Absolutely, Eric. The Adaptive Acquisition Framework, or AAF, is really the DoD's answer to the need for flexibility in acquisition. It's built around 6 distinct pathways: urgent capability acquisition, middle tier of acquisition, major capability acquisition, software acquisition, defense business systems, and acquisition of services. Each pathway is designed to match the characteristics and urgency of the capability being acquired. So, for example, if you need something fast for an emerging threat, you might use the urgent capability pathway. If you're developing a major new weapon system, that's major capability acquisition. The key is that program managers can tailor, combine, and even transition between these pathways as needed.
Yeah, and I love that idea of tailoring. It's not just a one-size-fits-all process anymore. The AAF really empowers program managers to make decisions that fit the mission, not just tick boxes. There's a big emphasis on risk management, sustainment, and, this is important, data-driven analytics. It's all about getting the right solution to the end user and doing it in a way that's actually sustainable and affordable.
That reminds me of a project I worked on a few years back, producing a podcast for a defence contractor. They were transitioning a program from the middle tier of acquisition to major capability acquisition. And let me tell you, the tailoring was not as smooth as the policy makes it sound. There were real challenges in defining transition points, coordinating information requirements, and just making sure everyone was on the same page. It's one thing to have the flexibility on paper, but in practice, it takes a lot of coordination and, honestly, a bit of patience.
That's a great point, Eric. The framework gives you the tools, but it's up to the program managers and decision authorities to use them effectively. And as you said, the transition between pathways, especially when statutory thresholds come into play, can get complicated. But the intent is clear. Simplify policy, empower managers, and actively manage risk throughout the life cycle.
And just to add, cybersecurity is now baked in from the start. It's not an afterthought anymore. That's something we touched on in our last episode about data protection. If you missed it, go back and have a listen. But yeah, the AAF is really about making the system work for the mission, not the other way around.
So with that foundation, let's talk about what's changing. Executive Order 14265 is a big deal. It's all about modernising defence acquisitions and spurring innovation. Ruby, what stands out to you in this executive order?
Honestly, it's the push for speed. The order is pretty blunt about the current system being too slow and rigid. It calls for accelerating procurement, prioritizing commercial solutions, and streamlining the whole acquisition process. There's also a big focus on cutting unnecessary regulations, like if a rule doesn't add value, it's on the chopping block. And they want to incentivize risk-taking and innovation, which is a huge cultural shift for the DoD.
Right, and from a workforce perspective, EO 14265 is asking for a complete review of roles: program managers, contracting officers, engineers, the whole lot. The idea is to eliminate redundant tasks, centralize decision-making, and make sure performance evaluations actually reward people for using commercial solutions and innovative pathways. It's not just about process, it's about people and how they're measured.
Paul, you've actually seen some of this in action, haven't you? I remember you mentioning Critical Prism Defence benefited from other transactions authority. How did that play out?
Yeah, that's right. We were able to use other transactions authority, OTA, to move a project from concept to prototype in a fraction of the time it would have taken under traditional contracting. The new policies in EO 14265 really prioritize these kinds of authorities, making it easier for program managers to use them. It's about getting capability to the warfighter faster, and honestly, it works when you have the right team and leadership support. But, it's not a silver bullet. You still need oversight and risk management, but the flexibility is a game changer.
And I think the order's also clear that small businesses and commercial tech are going to play a much bigger role. There's a real effort to open the doors wider, not just for the big primes, but for anyone with a good idea and the ability to deliver.
Exactly. It's a bold move and it's going to take some adjustment, but the direction is clear. Faster, more innovative, and more inclusive.
Let's dig into the workforce side and the role of small businesses. The executive order and the new programs like DIU's Immersive Commercial Acquisition Program, ICAP, are really about bridging the gap between DoD and commercial tech. ICAP, for example, is training acquisition professionals to work directly with commercial solution providers, learn best practices, and bring that knowledge back to their home organizations.
Yeah, and I actually interviewed a defense tech founder recently who went through one of these programs. She talked about how small businesses can inject fresh ideas and move quickly, especially when they're working with programs that have urgent or innovative needs. The barriers are coming down. At least that's the goal. The DoD wants to be an attractive business partner. Otherwise, they risk missing out on life-saving tech that's being developed in the private sector.
And it's not just about training individuals, right? The whole workforce is being modernised. There's a push to remove barriers for small businesses, boost innovation through agile acquisition, and make sure the people in these roles are equipped to handle commercial technology integration. It's a big shift from the old way of doing things.
Exactly. The ICAP program, for instance, is immersive. Participants work on real projects, get hands-on experience with commercial partners, and then develop training plans to share what they've learned. It's about creating a network of change agents across the acquisition community. And as the executive order points out, small businesses are essential to the strength and resilience of the defense industrial base. Their innovation is critical for national security.
And I think it's worth mentioning too that these changes are designed to make the DoD more competitive in attracting top talent. If you want the best people, you have to give them the tools and the freedom to innovate. Otherwise, they'll go somewhere else, probably to the private sector, where things move a lot faster.
So all these reforms sound great on paper, but how do we know if they're actually working? What are the metrics, the KPIs that will tell us if acquisition is really getting faster, more innovative, and more open to small businesses?
That's a critical question, Eric. You need clear metrics, cycle times for acquisitions, the number of small businesses participating, the rate of commercial technology integration, and even innovation outcomes. It's not enough to just say, we're moving faster. You have to prove it with data. That means developing comprehensive training modules, certification programs, and a feedback loop with industry stakeholders. Small businesses and commercial tech firms need to be part of that conversation so policies can be refined as challenges emerge.
Yeah, and I think the feedback loop is key. If you're not listening to the people actually doing the work or the companies trying to break in, you're going to miss the mark. It's about continuous improvement, not just a one-time fix. And the training piece is huge. If the workforce isn't ready for these new pathways, the reforms won't stick.
It's a bit like what we discussed in our first episode about FAR and DFARS. Compliance is only as good as the people and processes behind it. You can have the best policies in the world, but if you don't measure and adapt, you're just spinning your wheels.
Exactly. And the executive order is clear. There needs to be a formal review process, not just for programs, but for the workforce and the regulations themselves. That's how you drive real, lasting change.
Looking ahead, what's going to shape defense acquisition in the next few years? I mean, we're talking about emerging tech like AI, cybersecurity, autonomous systems. These aren't just buzzwords, they're real priorities for the DoD.
Absolutely, Ruby. The future is going to be defined by how well the DoD can adapt to these trends. That means setting up dedicated task forces to explore new acquisition models, digital engineering, open systems architecture, rapid prototyping. The goal is to stay ahead of adversaries, not just keep up. And it's not just about technology, it's about partnerships, working with academic institutions, industry consortia, and even international allies to drive collaborative R&D that aligns with these reform objectives.
And I think that's where the real opportunity lies. If the DoD can harness the energy and innovation of the broader tech ecosystem, while still maintaining the discipline and oversight needed for national security, that's a winning combination. But it's going to take strategic adaptation, being willing to try new models, measure what works, and pivot when necessary.
Yeah, and it's not just about buying the latest gadget. It's about building a system that can evolve as technology changes. That's a big shift from the old linear acquisition model.
So, to bring it all together, the next step is really about integrating technology and policy. That means piloting new acquisition technologies, digital twins, blockchain for supply chain transparency, things like that. You also need a robust data analytics platform to track progress in real time, cycle times, small business engagement, innovation metrics. It's about having the right information to make smart decisions quickly.
And don't forget the partnerships, strategic alliances with startups, research institutions, even international partners. Those are going to be key for co-developing solutions and making sure prototypes actually make it into production. It's not enough to just have a good idea. You need a pathway to get it fielded, fast.
It's a massive undertaking, but the direction is clear. The DoD is moving toward a more agile, innovative, and inclusive acquisition system. And as we've seen in previous episodes, whether it's data protection or contract negotiation, the details matter. We'll be keeping an eye on how these reforms play out and what it means for everyone in the defense procurement world.
Absolutely. And as always, if you're in the field, whether you're a program manager, a small business, or just someone interested in acquisition reform, stay engaged, keep learning, and don't be afraid to challenge the status quo.
Couldn't have said it better myself, Paul. Thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll be back soon with more on the evolving world of defense procurement. Eric, Paul, catch you next time.
Thanks, Ruby. Thanks, Paul. And thanks to all our listeners. Stay tuned for more insights and, as always, keep those questions coming. Goodbye for now.